that or not.
Let's go to our guest line. We don't want to keep Chris Carlson waiting any longer. So sorry to fall behind here, Chris. Are we? Or do we have him yet? Chris on with us?
No, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Hopefully a sign of a good show, guys.
Yes.
If you're falling behind, right? Good show.
Yes. And Paulie was late to bring you on, but we got you now. Always great to chat with you. What?
Total throw under the bus. The world didn't need to know that.
I'm starting my conversation. You didn't pot him up. So anyway, right, off we go. All right, let's talk some football, Chris. And you know, we saw a very similar scenario play itself out in Miami as we've seen the last 6 games. If you're Fran Brown, what do you do at the quarterback position for these last 2 games?
I think I play Ricky against Notre Dame because, I don't want to ask either Luke or Joe to have to do that. I mean, Notre Dame is just so good, and there are points in their career where they will be so outmatched that I just don't want to ask either of those freshmen to do that. And Ricky does. You know, we've seen him score some points late in games. So I just think he's a little more physically mature. There's a little bit more chance that something good happens, although there's also a higher chance that something bad happens. I think you give him Notre Dame, and then that Boston College game, I think whoever you think is maybe the quarterback that you like for the future, you give him that start in a game where – you know, he has a fair chance to succeed and has a chance to get his career, has a good moment ending the season, has a game where all he has to do is really protect the ball and make good decisions. I send that guy out in that game.
I'm sure you get this question a lot, Chris, but I'm going to ask it to you again. If Steve Angeli did not get hurt against Clemson, what is this team's record right now?
It's so hard because now the offensive line is so beat up, right? And I know Angeli he gets rid of the ball quick. He had that same ability as McCord to make decisions really fast. Whatever. I mean, I think they'd be. I do think that. I think they'd be 6-4. You know, maybe 5-5. I think they'd be headed to a bowl. But the way the offensive line has sort of gotten chewed up late, I don't know if, you know, that would have been avoided if Steve played. And I think it would be tough sledding for any quarterback with the offensive line sort of in the state that it's in right now and the lack of a running game. I think those things were going to be problems eventually.
Yeah.
You mentioned the lack of the running game. That has a lot to do with the offensive line. But do you think Angeli would have made that difference, too, that the running game would have been better if they had Angeli in the games?
Yeah, absolutely, right? I mean, you know, you'd certainly be more worried about the passing game. You know, the quarterback, you know, has some power to make adjustments in blocking assignments and make decisions. So you're right, Paulie. I think it would have helped, but they weren't exactly killing it on the ground when Steve was in either. So I don't think it would be a ton better. But you're right. You're right that there is more focus on stopping the run now because you just want the quarterbacks to have to throw.
Do you think there's a chance maybe we are overvaluing Steve Angeli too?
You know, if we are, I'm guilty of it more than anybody because I was declaring him the franchise quarterback after Clemson. And then you look at Clemson, and that was a win that we all thought was so impressive. And I still think it is. I still think it is. But it turns out that wasn't a great Clemson team. But I do think they were playing. They hadn't fallen apart yet. I mean, I think Steve is really good. So I'm going to go with no. I don't think we're overvaluing him, but I do think that's a good question. And I think there's a chance that we are.
What do you make of the coaching changes that Fran announced last week with, you know, the shakeup, you know, moving Nunzio back to the tight ends? And, you know, we heard what, you know, Fran said about it, that he wanted a different voice and that, you know, thought that it would help Ricky. And, you know, what do you make of Michael Johnson moving into that quarterback room and the changes that Fran announced?
I think it's interesting. You know, I think it sort of says that and I don't know if this is good or bad, but Fran is going to be a tinkerer. And he is not going to just say, we can't do any better than what we're doing. And that could be both good or bad, right? It turned out like the game against North Carolina, the tinkering was ended up with four completed passes. So that was not exactly good tinkering. And an older coach might have just said, hey, I'm not going to ask the lacrosse player to do that. And Ricky's the best we can do. And that's that. I think Michael Johnson's been an offensive coordinator. He is certainly very experienced in that role. Ricky and Nunzio have talked all year, and it hasn't worked. So I think it makes a lot of sense to just see if maybe a different voice, a different way of hearing some of those lessons just sort of connects in a way that it hadn't previously. I think the interesting question is if Steve is the quarterback next year, do you go back to Nunzio as the quarterback's coach? Because it seemed like that was like a good fit and that was working. Or do you sort of leave it the way that it is at the end of this season? I think that's a really interesting sort of choice that Fran has to make moving forward.
When I asked you about the quarterbacks a little bit earlier, you said you go with the guy against BC that you feel like has the best chance to help you out next year in whatever capacity, backup or whatever. Do you think the true number 2 quarterback on next year's roster is on this year's roster?
Probably no, I don't. I think you are, and just because, right? I mean, Joe Filardi is a lacrosse player, and Luke Carney, they don't trust to throw a pass down the field. So I have not seen anything that makes me think they feel good about those guys heading into next year. So I think there's probably one. It might be Zayd Lott. It might be the freshman that they're bringing in. And I do think they have a pitch to make to a quarterback. It's the same pitch they sort of would have made to Ricky, right? It is, hey, your third string somewhere, come to Syracuse, be the true backup, get all the reps in the spring. Steve his health is a question. You might end up starting, and that is a better opportunity than some guys are going to have elsewhere. And I think you can get a guy in to Syracuse that way. He's probably not going to be the quarterback that everybody wants, but I think he's probably an upgrade over what you would have otherwise.
Looking ahead to next year, I know you had a chance to speak with Demetrius Samuel after the Miami game, and he said to you that he's coming back. What can you share about that conversation with him? And I guess, it kind of goes without saying, but want to get your thoughts on how big this is for Fran Brown and the Orange that he's coming back.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen guys say they're coming back and then they don't, right? And I want to acknowledge that right off the rip. Malik Brown, I think Johnny Flynn, like that happens. I did try to be really careful with Demetrius and not say, like, are you coming back, and feel like, I was demanding an answer. I went into that conversation. I was like, hey, I don't know if you've made up your mind about next year yet. But are you coming back? Are you going to explore your options? And he came up pretty strongly that he was coming back. I think it was a really good sign that he said he talked to Fran about coming back. So it didn't feel like this was somebody who was unprepared for that answer and that conversation. So I've had a lot of people on social media saying they don't believe it until it happens. And that's fair. But I feel like Demetrius was more certain about it than guys that I've talked to in the past. And obviously that's huge for Fran. I mean, he's one of the best freshman cornerbacks in the country, maybe the best. He's played a ton. You sort of made him a little bit the face of your program during spring and training camp when you said he was going to be a two-way player, and you said he was looking like he was going to be a starter when he was 16 years old. And it sends a sign if he comes back that Syracuse can keep guys that other programs in the country are going to want, because there is going to be a market for Demetrius. He knows that. So returning to Syracuse would say that at least in select cases when they need to, they can fend off other programs and keep their best players.
What's the biggest area of need in the offseason as they look to the transfer portal?
Defensive line, to me. It hasn't been great this year, and they're losing. I mean, Kevin Jobity's been good. Kevin Jobity's been really good. I think. But all their guys are old and leaving, and they haven't been great to start with. So, you want a bunch of redshirt freshmen and sophomores being your defensive line next year. Most of the time, those guys aren't physically ready to be good and certainly not great. So to me, they have to go out and they have to get some experience there. I think they probably need a linebacker. I was pretty surprised that Gary Bryant, is 49th of 50 linebackers in PFF grade. And I know PFF grade isn't everything, and it's not the gospel, but that's not good. So I think they probably need to go out and get a linebacker. And if I were them, I'd feel better if I had a couple veteran offensive linemen, similar to like Austin Collins and Ferguson, who they brought in to do a good job this year. I feel better with at least a couple older guys that you have faith in, rather than trying to elevate a bunch of guys next season.
And then just lastly from me, Chris, do you think Syracuse wins another game this year? Do they beat BC in the finale?
Yeah, I think they're going to beat BC. I think, you saw in the first half against Miami that Syracuse's defense played hard. That was not a team that had given up from the jump. I think BC, they have not won a conference game this year. They're playing a game on the road against Thanksgiving. I think the home team always has an advantage in games when it doesn't matter a whole bunch. And I do think that Syracuse is just outmanned rather than having, mailed in the season at this point. So I do think that they're going to end the season with a win.
All right, Chris. Good stuff. We appreciate your insight as always. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, anytime. Have a good rest of your show, guys.
All right. Chris Carlson, Syracuse.com. SU football beat writer, does a great job covering